And welcome back to another episode of the ABCs of ERP and Beyond podcast, where we explore the world of enterprise resource planning systems and how they can help transform businesses. And in today's episode, we're focusing on an exciting journey that many businesses are considering, transitioning from Microsoft Dynamics NAV to Business Central. So if you're exploring this move or already in the process, or you're just considering it, then hopefully today's episode will give you some of the considerations, strategies, and tips to make that migration as smooth and as successful as possible. So if you're an ERP novice or a seasoned pro, stay tuned. Hopefully there'll be a few tips in here. We'll break down what you might need to consider about embracing Business Central. And as ever, I am joined with my esteemed co-host, Nirav Shah. Welcome back.
Hey, Peter. Happy to be back here and shoot this episode. We've been talking about this one for a little bit. I'm just so surprised we haven't shot it sooner. It's an important topic in the NAV BC space. I remember when this when Business Central came out, it was like a lot of companies had a hard time embracing it because there wasn't many big changes and it was on the cloud and a lot of people were still on premise. But now that's a completely different story from what it was like 4 or 5 years ago. Like, almost every company now is looking at Business Central that's on NAV to do this upgrade. If they haven't done it already, very soon. And there's some very important considerations to do because, Business Central, we know there's just so much functionality that Microsoft is coming out with every release. And if you're not on Business Central now, you're just losing out on all the great investments that Microsoft is doing into Business Central, right? I feel, Business Central will not replace F&O, but Business Central is going to be a close second. Over the years, over time, it's going to get more and more advanced. It's going to have deep functionality. It's going to have these really slick integrations, and the app source market is just going to be powerful in terms of filling gaps in Business Central. They'll help verticalize Business Central even more for industries. So, it comes a time in all ERP in companies that have ERP system where you have to make a decision. Do you still stay with old ERP databases, right? And when do you move forward to the next version? And when do you move forward to the version that, could have a higher return on investment on the ERP process, right? So on your ERP system. So that decision will come sooner or later. Typically it doesn't come for like 10, 15 years after you implement. But a lot of those, customers are on NAV and they see the benefit of NAV and they've done customization, they've done different things, are probably looking at this. And I hope, what we talk about today, gives them the information they need to prepare properly for a Business Central upgrade. So this is a great episode. We live in the Business Central space every day, but I think a lot of what we talk about can carry over into different ERPs, right? I don't know, not just NAV and Business Central, but I think any ERP that you're running that's on premise and that you have an opportunity to upgrade to their SaaS version, I think a lot of this could still apply. The preparation behind an ERP upgrade is going to probably be similar. It's going to be important to talk about these points that we're trying to talk about today in your organization and create a really good plan to do it. Because one thing that I could probably say right out of the gate is don't expect to just upgrade overnight and say, we're gonna go use the new version next week. That doesn't happen. So you kind of have to be realistic about it and go through what steps are necessary for a successful upgrade.
Yeah, and I think with these tips, as you said, it kind of harks back to our very first episode, which is just the top 5 tips of ERP migration, where you can apply this to going from any ERP to any ERP. Really, it's all about that planning, what you can do ahead of time, how you can get your business as lean and as kind of understood as possible before you then go through an ERP kind of implementation or upgrade or just a straight migration. It's just good practice to kind of follow these. I know we've got a couple of specific BC things in here, especially around the differences in, say, something like my company uses at the moment, 2009, NAV 2009. The underlying code is completely different, which we'll talk about later on, compared to Business Central. So let's just kick this off, which is one that we're kicking off here with, which is applicable anywhere, and it's the reviewing of business processes. So documenting, say, current gaps in your environment at the moment, whether that be an environment where you haven't got an ERP, but in this case with NAV, identify the gaps that your business has to do as a process, map that out. You can even physically map that out. Post-it notes on a board works really effectively, and just go through and say, right, where are the pain points at each step of the process? What am I having to do? Fully understand your current process, where those gaps are, where you're having to jam in, say, a manual process or a manual step, or you're having to print this piece of paper and give it to someone because the system doesn't have any way of automating the flow of information department to department. So I want to get your side of this. So the documentation of processes and spotting gaps.
Yeah, this may seem like an unnecessary step, right? You're like, I'm already on NAV, I'm already on ERP system. I just want to upgrade to Business Central, right? Why would I want to do this? This step kind of gets like missed often, because you don't look at an upgrade as like an implementation. But if you're coming from NAV and you're going to Business Central, you kind of need to look at it that way. It's not like a re-implementation, but you have to go back and document your current business process. And the reason is, and you just alluded to that, Peter, is there's gaps, right? There might be current gaps in the process in the way you have NAV set up, right? And you want to then ensure, does that gap exist inside Business Central? Because Business Central, the latest version, 24.2 or 5, whatever we're on now, right, has filled a lot of gaps. They have made a ton of changes in both the architecture of the database and the functional processes in the application. So you first want to understand, what is the current state of your NAV environment? That starts with documenting your business process. I mean, everything from the front, right? What is, onboarding a new customer, sales order process, your planning process, MRP, MP. Are you using MRP and MPS? Maybe you're using Excel to still do your planning, which is very common. A lot of people do that. They're not ready. A lot of companies are not ready to use full-blown MRP and MPS planning engine yet. So they're using Excel or a report inside NAV that was developed. But maybe now you're saying that, hey, we're ready now. We're ready to move and look at a more robust planning engine. Maybe that's going to be one of the goals inside Business Central, to use a planning worksheet. A gap could be that you're doing shipping outside the system right now, and it's, as when you implemented NAV, maybe it wasn't a big requirement, but now business has increased. You're doing 100 shipments a day, but it's all kind of done outside the system, and you have to catch the system up. Maybe one of the gaps is you need a shipping integration in Business Central, right? Document all this stuff, and it's important because you need to know where you are currently. What's the mindset, right? How do you improve your current ERP environment? That also then goes with, also document what you're doing really, really well in NAV. Like, there's processes that that users absolutely love, that you become very efficient in. And to change that or to move away from that would be detrimental to the business. You need to know that as well, because when you move into Business Central, you want to make sure that same process is working that same exact way. And if it's not, figure out why. What's the workaround to it? So document also what's working really well. So basically all of your business processes when it comes to touching the ERP system. And you have to spend a lot of time doing this. Don't just take it lightly, because if this is done well, this is going to set the path forward of upgrading to Business Central correctly, right? To meet everyone's expectations. Because this is where a lot of assumptions happen. And if it's not documented, then really quickly towards the 11th hour of going live in Business Central, a lot of things start, falling off the wheels. And then you need to abort the upgrade, revisit it, and then, spend countless of additional hours and money, obviously resources to, um, you know, go back and upgrade. So spend some time doing this internally. I think this is an important one.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to add on a bonus tip just with something that you mentioned there about assumptions. Is when you're going through this and you're documenting processes of your business, it's really good when you form the team that if you have kind of sub teams that are analyzing reviewing business processes, say you're doing one for the finance, it's really, really good to not have finance lead that, because they make a bunch of assumptions. They're like, oh yeah, I just do that and then my chart of accounts is done. It's like, well, hang on, how did you get from A to B? And you find there's a bunch of steps they have to do outside of the system, or they do a bunch of work in Excel before they then go back to getting to point B. So I found it's a fresh pair of eyes. It's a really effective way of fully understanding it. Have someone from the warehouse lead a discussion of how finance do a month-end process. Have someone from finance lead how production get a production order through to booking in it as a finished goods into the warehouse, because then you get rid of the assumptions. If you have experts in the room, but have someone lead it that doesn't know the process, who's detached from the process, because they're the ones that are going to go, hang on, how do you get from there to there then? How do you get to the point where you know how much raw material to have? Because it's the assumptions that you want to find the bunch of work that's done outside of the system, because that's going to be where your nav installation is falling short. You need to find those, because otherwise it's just going to be like, oh yeah, just do that, I'll just get a load of raw material and it's done. Well, is that right? Is that the case? Then you'll find out, oh yeah, no, I have to do a bunch of calculations in Excel to know how much capacity I've got. Well, there you go. There's a load of assumptions and gaps in your current nav system.
Yeah, exactly. And this should be a fun initiative for the company. This should be like, it shouldn't be like looked at as like a boring process document. This should be really exciting for the company, and everyone should be all in and saying, yeah, these are all the things we like about nav. These are all the things that currently we have gaps, or we don't have visibility or blind spots in our business process. Like, let's get these solved, right? Like, you need to have this company excitement around this, upgrade, because it really is coming to BC. It's going to be an excitement. It should be an exciting time, because there's a lot more functionality that you're going to get and receive. It's going to be on the cloud, right, and all that. And sometimes ERP projects in general don't get that excitement factor like other IT projects do in the company sometimes. But have that extra bounce in your step. Whoever's going to be the project manager, and like really get everybody involved and get them to open up.
Get everyone in, have a day, like get pizzas in for lunch for everyone.
Yeah,
like
for
make
sure.
sure it feels like a team. I saw one company that got a load of customized jerseys done. I mean, how cheap is that? Say it's like $20 and you've got 10 people. For the cost of $200, you can get some custom ones. And they had ones that had like #RoadToBC like down it. It looked like a good football jersey.
Exactly.
Just a bit of fun
That's cool.
like that,
That is cool. That's fun, right? And that's the type of stuff you got to create this excitement around it, because if people are going to be excited, they're going to be all in, and they're going to make the project successful. So,
point number 2, review customizations. So, let's just dig into this. First of all, there's going to be a bunch of, let's split it. There's going to be a bunch of customizations you might have had done in your nav installation, and there's going to be a bunch of reports that you run outside of the system. So I'm going to start with the reports one, because I'm the data guy. First, I would take an inventory of current reports. List out all of the custom reports that you do, either inside the system or outside of the system. So when I think about nav, I think about the bunches of jet reports that I've ever made, often to solve one problem and it never gets used again. But itemize all of those, list out every single report you're doing, categorizing them maybe from what it's solving or the department that uses it, how many times it's used, what is it solving. Because for me, if it's not something that's a very financial heavy kind of report, we know our controllers all love Excel, which is fine, but it's everywhere, isn't it? When you get jet reports, it's like the world's your oyster, and then suddenly you're doing a bunch of processes outside of the system. And if you're moving to BC, you might not want that. You might not be wanting to purchase jet BC connector. You might be wanting to drop that. Well, there's going to be a time where you're sitting in front of a BC installation and overnight jet doesn't work. No jet report. You will not have any jet report. What do you do now?
Yep.
What do you do from your reporting?
Yep.
Especially if you are reliant on using jet reports to do business processes. I guess there's two different types of reports, isn't there? There's the one which is what a report should be, and then there's I use jet to extract data to be able to do a business process. I have to extract inventory to know what to purchase. That's a different use of a report, and I would say that's not really a report compared to doing my own layout of a chart of accounts. That's more of a report. So you need to itemize all of these and see what you're doing and evaluate them. Once you've got that, and again, it's one of these things, let's understand what we're doing now. Let's see what our new BC install has natively, and then work out the gaps from there. So for the reporting side, what have you got to share on this one?
Yeah, I think this is another one that kind of gets not enough emphasis during the upgrade process. Sometimes, you just say, "Oh, we're just going to bring over all the reports that we have." No, because as we know, NAV reports, right? They're a different style of report. Sometimes you got to maybe redo that whole report when you go to Business Central. It's not a clean migration of that report. So there's a lot of cost involved in moving reports, customized reports from one environment to another. It's definitely between NAV and BC. So try to eliminate, as many unused custom reports, right? Number one. And the other consideration is in NAV, you had to buy object ranges, right? So if you wanted reports, you needed code units, you needed tables, you needed to buy the ranges of that. Well, now in BC, you don't have to buy object ranges anymore like you had to before on the NAV side. You basically could have a developer write anything in the 50,000 range, right? Code object range and create customizations. So it's important to say that you don't want to, because of that, there might be some cost savings, right? Because you're not going to bring over all those different reports. You just want to bring in the reports that actually are usable. But you mentioned a really good thing, right? And I want your take on this, Peter. Is you mentioned doing the analysis of categorizing the reports. How many times the reports were run? Is this report actually necessary? Who should create that analysis in the company? Should it be department heads that are responsible to looking at all custom reports? Now, some custom reports are probably maybe not even viewable on the screen. Maybe they're job queues, right, that are running in the background. Maybe they do run them right through the UI. Maybe they had old reports that got hidden from the UI, the menu structure. So how do you really do this analysis to get a comprehensive look of all the reports out there? Who should be doing this? Is it like tag teaming with the IT department or the partner and the different department heads, or is it just a department head and that has these meetings and to find out which reports you want to bring forward? But who should be the main people involved in this?
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things that it's easy to say that everyone should always be involved. And that's true that everyone should be involved. But if you've got everyone involved on every single meeting, it's going to get tiresome really, really quickly, especially for the end users that are still trying to run the business compared to maybe department heads or C-level or stakeholders that aren't kind of running the business. So I guess from here, I'd imagine if you've got a stage in your ERP migration that is all around team formation, you should have identified these people at the front anyway. So who are the subject matter experts? It could be the department head is also the subject matter expert, or it could be that it's IT that are the ones that design the report. So I guess you should have already defined who you would be going to. But I think here it's important also to have a mix of people, because it would be very easy for IT to go, okay, this report is, say, not run very often, so it can't be important, we'll just kill it. But it might be a very particular report that finance need at month end. So it's only going to be run, once a month, say, compared to something that's run every single day, but maybe the end user goes, I only look at it if I've got a spare 5 minutes just out of curiosity. Maybe it's a report that runs, multiple times a day, but it's just run in case someone needs up-to-date data, but it's not very important. So it's very difficult to really let that decision be made by one person, because it's probably not just one person that designed the report, that had the requirements, that built the report, and also uses the report. So that's a long way of me saying, I guess it depends, but I think it should be something that should be shared when you're, one, defining the report, and two, deciding whether this is a report that can just die or is something that is needed and we need to redesign how that looks and how that runs in BC.
Yeah, exactly. And as you mentioned, Power BI is a great fallback plan, right? If it's a report you don't want to create, keep it out for now. And if you do need it later on, pretty straightforward to bring that over into Power BI, right? And show that information. So yeah, reports is a great consideration, but then we got the other side of it, right? We got the business logic changes. That's actually changes to the core logic where you're updating, if this happens in the system, then this should take place, right? If then statements, um, you know, automations and things like this that are in place currently in your nav environment, right? Those need to be reviewed. And they need to be looked at from the perspective of, well, was this customization necessary? This logic change necessary in the light of what's available in Business Central, right? Not just like, yeah, we needed a nav because this was a gap, but is this customization necessary in Business Central? Or is this customization not adding any value and we don't need it in Business Central, right? I think there's, this is probably as important as reports, right? Maybe a little more depending on how much customization is there in the business logic perspective. But you got to weigh out the pros and cons of all the different customizations. This could get a little tricky, right? If you don't know, right, you definitely need your developer involved in this one, because for the end user, they might not know that this is a customization. Even on the report side, the end user may not know that this is a custom report.
Yep.
So a developer needs to call out that, hey, this process, like they need to, or technical resource, right, or project manager needs to document what these customizations are for each department, each process, and then have meetings to say, do we need to bring these forward or not, right?
Yeah. And it could be a customization that has no front end interface. You might not even be aware that it's in there. It might be some back process or some automation that's built in that,
Yep.
and employees come and go, don't they? So, and if you've got an ERP that's been around for over 10 years, you might not have the same people there that were there when the customization was built. You may have moved to a different support company. Maybe you've got a different bunch of MSPs that didn't actually write the original customization. So it's very easy for that to go under the radar. You certainly don't want to be in a position where you go live and within the first week it's like, yeah, we can't do this. Like, there's a massive breakdown. We can't ship orders because we didn't realize there was this customization that we used to have.
Yeah, exactly. And such a huge point. And that's why I think with this one, it's important to understand what Business Central could do when you're evaluating your customization, because you need to lay out the pros and cons, and if this is available in BC already out of the box, that it's no longer a customization, right? As we alluded to earlier, Business Central is Microsoft is investing billions of dollars in their ERP products. And there's new functionality that's coming out every release, whether that's technical or application based, but there's new functionality coming out. So you need to understand what BC could do initially before having this conversation of business logic, in my perspective at least. Because to consider something a pro or a con and not knowing if BC is going to be able to do it or not, I think you'll just be spinning your wheels. But yeah, this is important, and the programming logic has changed, right? It's no longer Seaside. That was there in NAV. Now it's extension based AL code, which I think is probably a little simpler. You don't need a developer's license to do the modification. Developers could jump in, pop open your database in Visual Studios and create code and extensions. They're not modifying standard code, standard Microsoft code. They're creating their own code that gets attached essentially to the database or the environment, but it's not modifying standard business Microsoft code. So that gets you in the kind of position to upgrade with Microsoft every release when you do move on to Business Central on the cloud. So which is a great thing, but at the same time, right, it's going to require a rewrite of that code that you decide to bring over. So it's important to understand that it's not just you could take that piece of code and move it straight over into Business Central. You need to rewrite that code into Business Central and have that work and operate. So that's an important point to understand, from a business logic perspective.
Yep. I've got one bonus tip in this as well from the business side of things. I think it's really important to tell your vendor, look, we're receptive to changing our business processes if it means that we avoid a load of customizations that we might
Yep.
we might
Absolutely.
have to have.
Absolutely.
So it's easy with a legacy mindset and people being like, well, that's the way it's always done. You've got to challenge each other. You've got to ask, like, does the customer really care that we have to do this? Right. If the answer is no, you can probably strip it out of the business. We must always put the customer first with a lot of the value add that we're doing. So does the customer care? Does the customer care that I do a bunch of this work, that if we just tweaked our business process and we just fell in line with the way that BC runs or whatever your ERP of choice you're moving to, what is the opportunity cost of the difference of forcing a customization versus we just tweak our process slightly and we avoid it all in the first place?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And these customizations, right, could be replaced by third-party apps in Business Central. So, which would give you way more functionality, right, that you could grow into, or that you might even need. So you don't have to customize what's already there that you need to bring over Business Central, and you get something that you actually need from using a third-party app, and they maintain the upgrade pattern and a routine that's in parallel with Microsoft. So that might be another avenue to look at, and we'll talk about this a little bit, I think, in point 4 when we talk about integration third-party solutions. But yeah, that's another consideration when you look at business logic changes. Is there a third-party app that could replace this and give me better functionality than what I currently have for this existing enhancement?
Okay, point number 3, data integrity. So assessing, again, it goes back to assessing your business and assessing your data. So data integrity is really important because over the years, people don't do things. People don't update the ERP. People keep changes in an Excel spreadsheet and just do VLOOKUPs and stuff like this. The integrity of data and assessing the quality of your data before transitioning over to a new ERP, before bringing in all of your customers and vendors and OpenAP and OpenAR, is it in a good condition?
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like this should have been part of maybe business process review, maybe data, reviewing the data. But yeah, I think this is important enough to have its own point, because let's face it, right? In a business, employees change, right? You have new users that come in. You expand, you have more users come in, right? You have somebody leave, you're going to replace that person. And if your business processes weren't great, there's room for error in the data, right? There's opportunities where data's missed, not entered. into the system. And over time, that just kind of multiplies. And what people end up doing, I think it's human nature, is they start gaining tribal knowledge. They go, we're always missing this field. So I already know what it is. I don't even think about it anymore. Right. And I move on with my day. Right. For me to go call two other people, if we change a field, takes like 2 hours. So I don't even bother with that anymore. Right. Whatever that is. And if you're using an ERP system 10, 15 years, there's bound to be data issues, right? In the software, like you're even changing base tables. Let's say a customer's been bought and merged, right? Or something's happened, right? But you kind of have like 3 different customers now. But instead of 3 different customers, you want to merge that into one customer, right? To make your business analytics a little better. Like stuff like that. It's just natural business processes, right? The evolution of businesses. So you got to look at how far off is your data. How much of that data is still usable, right? How much grief is that data giving you? Do you have to create specialized reports just to cover up data gaps and issues, right? And if you find that you're doing more of that data cleanup constantly than the system actually working for you, right? I think that's a big red flag. Like, does it make sense to move forward with the data that we have? Now, I'm not talking about the whole system, right? Where you have to redo all the data. Maybe it's just customer master. Maybe it's just item master, right? Maybe it's just your chart of accounts or your dimensions or whatever that is, whatever that looks like, right? Whatever area you feel like poses the biggest threat of continued issues when you upgrade is the place that you want to focus in on, and maybe look at a data migration strategy as part of the upgrade to bring clean data in that department or overall.
Yep, and it's easy, especially if you go into BC and they have, we have this data import wizard and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't know whether your information is out of date. So for me, that is easy to slip up. Like it's on paper, it's nice to have a wizard, and yes, that will match table columns to table columns from nav to BC and all that kind of fun stuff. But it won't know whether your information is accurate, missing on optional fields that you actually need, or just simply out of date, like old accounts payable teams, old email addresses no longer work, old shipping addresses attached to customers that they no longer exist or closed down. You really need to assess first, have this kind of staging area for your data, extract full tables into Excel or whatever else, clean it up, remove the crap, check for data accuracy with subject matter experts from each department before you start looking at transitioning over into the new environment.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. This is critical, right? Should probably be placed up at the top. How good is our data to move over into BC, right? Move over into BC, and there's going to be a lot of inputs here. You might have a new finance team, a new CFO that's come in that wasn't around when you first did the implementation. He's going to say, "Hey guys, this is an opportunity for us to change our chart of accounts that matches more with industry standard, right? Create some better analytical reports. Update our part numbers that represent the market a little better, right? Stuff like that it's going to be important for the next 10 years of the business. You just can't bring like 10 years of data in assuming that's the same data that you're going to use 10 years from now, right? You kind of have to look at it. Well, is our data in our current system set up for success for another 10 years or 15 years? So it's an important mindset to be in. So you get the most out of it, right? Because ERP is just transactional data. The value of ERP is what you do with the data. It's how you report on it, how you find opportunities, your weaknesses of your organization, right? Solve those weaknesses, find new markets, right? Purchase better, lower your purchasing, increase your margins. That's the value of your ERP. And the goal should always be to increase your margin. So data is important. I think it goes without saying data is important here, and shouldn't be just looking at it from a one-dimensional standpoint that we're just using it to upgrade. No, you're using it to upgrade plus grow your business.
Point number 4, you may already have integrations or third-party solutions in your NAV environment. So you need to assess those, see what they are. You might have, you might be using or utilizing EDI or some kind of OCR like DocuWare or whatever it happens to be. You need to see whether that one exists in the BC environment, and also is theirs compatible with the latest version of BC? Because you might be moving straight onto, I don't know what it is, version 23, version 24 now. Are they
24.5, yeah, too.
okay, 24.5? Are they supporting that? Do they only go up to a particular version? Are they dropping it? Are they even still operating? Because sometimes these integrations, the company folds, but if you're an on-prem situation where you don't necessarily need to ping that third party supplier's servers or whatever, you might not even know that they're out of business anymore. If it was a one-time payment and installed, well, what happens when you go to a new BC and you realize that you can't take this with you? Because it might be something that's integral. It might be to do with how documents run through your business. It could be, especially in Europe, it could be something that you had to do since Brexit, which is a bad thing to talk about for us. So it's a bunch of work. It's a bunch of work, trust me. But the customs documentations and import licenses and export licenses, you're going to still need to do that in the new system. Is your layout at the moment compatible in BC, or are you going to have to work from the ground up?
Yeah, exactly. There's a prime example in the US, Lanham eShip, and they have really solid shipping solution. Nothing against them, but when BC Cloud came out, a very popular product in NAV was called Lanham eShip, and it basically provided integrated shipping solutions for customers on NAV. So they could do small parcel shipping in NAV. So you could do UPS labels, FedEx labels, all out of the UI, right? Integrated into NAV. But they were very slow transitioning to the cloud. So a lot of those customers that are NAV customers that went to BC couldn't bring that third-party solution along. So they ended up looking at other third-party solutions that are already on the cloud. So now Lanham they have a great solution, eShip that's on the cloud now, and it's very very reasonable priced and all that. But it took them a while, right? They probably lost some customers along the way doing it, and customers had to change the process. So you want to make sure that if you have any third-party solutions, any integrations in the system, if you're using third-party, right, make sure they're compatible with BC. If not, then you're going to have to look at an alternate solution when you jump onto BC. So kind of put together a list of what you have in your current environment, so you can research out there if they're available.
It's funny, isn't it, that we've seen this before when we talk about e-commerce. If you haven't got someone watching what's happening in the tech world or in the industry, soon you're going to realize what customer loyalty actually means. Because if your competitors are straight away on the e-commerce and have got a very slick system that talks to their ERP, that ships within 24 hours because they've got their systems that are connected, and you haven't, you'll very quickly find out that maybe some of your customers aren't as loyal as you thought they were. And this is a case as well, isn't it? I guess for Lanham, I'm sure they found out very quickly just how many of their customers aren't actually loyal. And if they're in a position where they can't now support a cloud-based SaaS model, people are just going to jump ship. I'm just going to find someone that can support my BC.
Right, exactly.
It's very important to have at least someone watching what's happening in the advancements of technology.
Agreed.
Point number 5, last one here. Solid project plan and expectations. So this is a big one, man. We could do a whole episode on this. Having plan Bs, having backup plans, having a roadmap, having a change control system or change approval system, I'm just throwing out everything here. Have a sandbox environment. Man, that's a big one, isn't it? I'm going to throw this over to you, though, because you've written down test, test, test. So I know
Yeah.
this is a big, important point.
Yeah. Don't assume that the same process is going to work the same way in Business Central, right? Yeah. The core of BC is NAV, is NAV, but there's just a ton of changes in there. New functionality in BC now. So don't assume that because you had a button here on a sales order that the same button's going to exist on the ribbon on the sales order in BC, right? And that might be a very important button for you to do your job, right? And they also Microsoft has moved it out. Maybe they made it into a button on the list view instead of the header, right? Like test and recreate those work instructions based on that testing. And then you quickly identify, well, there's a gap here, or this process is even better. We don't need this customization. So test means in that project plan, there should be a bigger emphasis, more time put in that project plan for testing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of time for testing. That should be the biggest component of this, is testing, right? First, you test the vanilla instance of BC, right? Then you got to test the instance with your customizations and reports, right? And then you decide to go live. So there's really two parts of this thing. Testing is going to be the biggest phase of the project plan. If it's the smallest phase of your project plan, I would highly question that project plan if it's set up for your success to move from NAV to BC.
Yeah.
So it's super important from that standpoint. Now you don't with the upgrade project, you don't have to worry about too much of a cutover, right? Like a financial cutover, like we have to do when you initially go live, like your OpenAR, OpenAP, GL, like everything balances, like all that will balance when you come over with the upgrade. But the testing of workflows is the most important part to ensure that you haven't missed anything. And people come in Monday morning with the new system, with an upgraded BC environment, they know exactly what they're doing, right? It's not frantic and chaos everywhere. Not to say there can't be a little bit of that, but there shouldn't be someone scratching their head and be like, oh, I have no idea what I should do now at this point. Sales screen looks completely different than it did in my other environment. Now I have no idea what I need to do, right? So
Yes, this is one of those ones where user acceptance testing is so much more important than the cutover and go live. Because cutover is like a flick of a switch. It's one day to the next. Go live, maybe there's some immediate post support, maybe a week where you've still got your ERP vendor support team on site, maybe to make sure that everything's running in that initial first few days. But it's pretty simple, isn't it? Cutover is just cutover. But the user acceptance testing is really when the business is saying, and your end users are saying, yes, I can do my job. I understand how to do it in the new system and it works for me. There's nothing we've missed. So I think here in this UAT phase is really then you find out how good your discovery phase was, because you certainly don't want to be this far. The work's been done. You've got sandbox environments. You're pretty much ready to go. Your data's been cleaned. It's been imported over. And then you find out we missed a bunch of stuff in discovery.
exactly.
Because you didn't engage with customer service as much, or assumptions were made during the business planning phase. You don't want to be in a position where you're months down after months of development and then someone goes, yeah, we forgot a bunch of stuff. So this is really important, because if you cut over and you're going live in your new system and you skipped a load of stuff or you missed stuff, then an ERP failure is on the cards. It's going to be organ rejection. You should go and watch that episode if you haven't seen that.
You should go watch that episode.
But it is, isn't it? It's like this. There's the two critical parts. You as the business have two critical parts: the discovery phase and the UAT phase. Training will come, and people like BC, Microsoft have lots of guides and training videos and in-house training and training, maybe immediate training with your vendor. So that's fine, but it's really down to you to properly understand your business, run through all the processes with your vendor, who can then assess what is covered with a vanilla install, or say, right, you need a customization for this bit. They will then go and do that development work, but it's then straight back to you as the business. You need to test this stuff. You need to run every single eventuality through the system and go, right, what happens if a customer does X? What if a customer does Y? What if we suddenly are now, have a supply chain issue? Or what happens if we have a capacity issue? What happens if this machine goes down and we do a bunch of like work outside of the system, or work we used to do outside of the system?
Right.
Run through every scenario, fully test that, because cutover is just a flick of a switch. And if the UAT is not done extensively, it doesn't matter when that flick of a switch is going to happen. It's just going to be a potential failure.
Yeah, exactly. It's super important point. Make sure your project plan has it.
Very good. I've thrown in a couple of bonus tips during this episode. I'm going to throw it over to you, though, just to see. Have you got any other bonus tips during our discussion? Has a light bulb gone off?
Yeah, I got one bonus tip. If your upgrade project is expected to take you longer than a year, consider a re-implementation of Business Central. Don't upgrade with that data. Don't upgrade with those customizations. Look at this from a fresh light, and look at this like, hey, let's reevaluate our business processes, and let's do things the right way inside Business Central, and use more maybe what's out of the box. Only do the customizations necessary. Engage third-party ISVs where necessary, and develop better workflows. Because over a year, this is way too long. You're just making way too many changes, or your data's too bad, so bad, in such bad shape that you're cleaning the heck out of it. It's taking longer than you need to, right? Rewriting the customizations are just an extensive process for you. So consider maybe a re-implementation of BC. I think it might work out better in the long run.
Very good. That is concludes our episode today. I'm really glad that we did this one. I know we thought of a couple of other ideas that we can do from this ERP to that ERP. So I think these are really cool.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. This one was really specific to NAV and BC, but NAV customers also move on to different ERPs, and we have a couple that we'll probably end up talking about in the near future. But hopefully, this one for customers that are looking to move from NAV to BC get some really good pointers, and will help them move their projects along a little bit more efficiently and successful at the end of the day.
Yes, indeed. So that wraps up another episode of the ABCs of ERP and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to the world of ERP, everything to do with it, all the fun stuff there is in ERP. It's not as dry as people say it is. A podcast episode comes out every 2 weeks. This is our second year of running this, so we rely on people to smash the like button and subscribe and repost. Is it on LinkedIn? I think it's called reposting.
Yeah.
So spread the message that this is a podcast, hopefully, for everyone, really. People new to the world of ERP, businesses that maybe are transitioning onto their very first ERP and don't really know where to turn. Hopefully, in our back catalogue, there's a few episodes now. I think we are certainly closing in on maybe 60 episodes now, something like that. So go and check them out. We record this as an audio podcast, so we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, anywhere our podcast will be on there. And we also publish this to YouTube, so I do recommend you check it out, because we often do demos of integrations and third-party solutions where we screen share and show you some of the cool stuff that happens in the world of ERP. So if you haven't, find us, the ABCs of ERP and Beyond, on YouTube as well. Nirav, thank you very much as ever. Until next time, take care of yourself, and I'll see you on the next episode.
All right, great. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks.